my dear friends. Before we start, I asked you all to press a like and leave your comment. This will help a lot to promote this video and to release news stories as soon as possible. It's not hard for you, but it's a pleasure for me. Thank you. It was a regular road trip, nothing special. Just a few days away from the city with some good friends, Sheldon, Callie, Harry, and me, Allison Reed. We had spent the entire day driving, our destination, a small, quiet coastal town known for its peaceful beaches and crystal clear waters. We hadn't planned every detail, which felt freeing, but by the time the sun dipped below the horizon, we were left scrambling for a place to sleep. We should have booked something ahead. Callie mumbled from the back seat, rubbing her temples. She had been flipping through her phone, trying to find last-minute accommodations. No luck. Relax, we'll find something, Harry said, always the optimist, though I noticed his eyes darting nervously between the empty fields and overgrown woods lining the road. We hadn't passed a town or a rest stop for hours, and our only companion was the moon, glowing dimly in the evening sky. Then, as if on cue, we saw him, an old man walking along the side of the road. His hunched figure was just visible in the headlights, moving slowly with a heavy limp. Ask him, Sheldon suggested from the passenger seat. Maybe he knows a place to stay. I was hesitant. There was something about the way the man's shadow stretched across the road that unsettled me. But time was running out, and we had nowhere else to go. I pulled over and rolled down the window. Excuse me, sir, I called out. We're looking for a place to stay the night. Do you know anywhere nearby? The man stopped, his head turning slowly toward us. His face was gaunt, his eyes sunken but alert. Ain't no one's around here, he said, his voice a raspy croak. But if you're needing a place, there's an old house down the road at Hollow Creek. Folks don't go there no more, but it'll give you shelter for the night. I exchanged a glance with Sheldon, who shrugged. The offer was eerie, but it wasn't like we had many choices. Thank you, I said, trying to hide the unease in my voice. The man's lips twisted into a crooked smile. Be careful out there, he warned before continuing on his way, his figure disappearing into the shadows. Harry chuckled from the back seat. Well, that was weird. Sheldon turned to face me. Do we trust this guy? I hesitated for a moment. What other option do we have? So, we took the road to Hollow Creek. As we drove deeper into the forest, the trees seemed to close in around us, their branches casting long, spindly shadows across the path. The air was thick, and a strange quiet settled over us, broken only by the sound of the tires crunching gravel beneath us. Finally, we saw it, a house standing alone in the distance, surrounded by wild overgrowth. It wasn't falling apart, but it had clearly seen better days. The windows were boarded up in some places, and the wooden porch sagged under the weight of neglect. A faded sign near the driveway read Hollow Creek Manor. Lovely, Kelly muttered sarcastically, climbing out of the car. Exactly the kind of place you want to spend the night. Sheldon gave a low whistle. It's got character. Harry laughed nervously. Yeah, character. That's one way to put it. As we unloaded our bags and made our way to the front door, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. The trees rustled faintly in the wind, but there was no other sound. It was as if the forest itself was holding its breath, waiting. Inside, the house was just as eerie. Dust covered every surface, and the air was stale, but the furniture was intact. A large fireplace dominated one wall of the living room, and the place smelled faintly of damp wood and something older, something that clung to the walls like a memory. We settled in, lighting a few candles we found in the kitchen. Sheldon and Callie rummaged through the cabinets, finding old canned goods and a few bottles of stale liquor. We ate what little food we had brought with us, the unease in the air growing thicker with each passing minute. You guys hear that? Harry asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Hear what? I replied, my ears straining to catch any sound. Knocking. From upstairs. I felt my skin prickle with cold fear. It's an old house, I reasoned, more to reassure myself than anyone else. Old houses make noises. But Harry shook his head. No, this is different. It's rhythmic. We all listened then, the silence pressing in on us. And then we heard it. A soft, but deliberate knock. 3 taps in quick succession. It stopped, then started again. 3 more taps, and then silence. Callie's face went pale. "What the hell is that?" Sheldon stood up, heading toward the staircase. "I'll check it out." I grabbed his arm, my heart racing. "No. We should stay together." He shrugged me off with a nervous grin. "It's probably just an animal or something. I'll be right back." I wanted to stop him, to tell him not to go, but the words wouldn't come. Sheldon disappeared up the stairs, the creaking of the old wood the only sound for what felt like an eternity. Then, the knocking stopped. For a moment, there was nothing but silence. And then, "Guys?" Sheldon's voice echoed down the stairs, shaky and uneven. I think you need to come see this." Reluctantly, we followed. Each step felt heavier than the last as we made our way to the second floor. The hallway was long and narrow, lined with closed doors on either side. At the end of the corridor, Sheldon stood frozen in front of one of the doors, his face pale. "What is it?" I asked, my voice barely audible. He didn't answer, just pointed at the door in front of him. It was slightly ajar, and through the crack, I could see what looked like an old, wooden table. On it lay something that made my blood run cold, an old coffin, its lid propped open beside it. "No way," Harry breathed, his voice trembling. "Let's get out of here," Kelly whispered, her eyes wide with fear. But before we could move, a soft creaking sound filled the air. The door to the room slowly swung open, revealing the full view of the coffin. And standing next to it was a figure, tall, thin, with skin the color of ash. Its face was hollow, its eyes sunken deep into its skull. One arm hung limply by its side, while the other reached out toward us. Who are you?" I stammered, my voice barely a whisper. The creature tilted its head, its eyes gleaming with a malevolent hunger. Its lips twisted into a grotesque smile, revealing rows of jagged, broken teeth. Then it spoke, its voice like nails scraping against stone. "Welcome. Home." I could barely breathe. My chest felt tight, like someone had placed a heavy weight on it, and the air around us seemed to thicken with every second. I wanted to turn and run, but my legs were rooted to the floor, my mind trapped in the sheer terror of the moment. Sheldon was the first to react, stumbling backward. "Guys, we need to go. Now." No one disagreed. The moment he spoke, Callie grabbed my arm, her fingers digging into my skin, her breathing ragged. Harry, usually the jokester, was deathly quiet, his eyes wide with the Sheldon fear that gripped me. But the thing, the creature, whatever it was, didn't move. It just stood there, watching us. Almost as if it was waiting. As if it was enjoying our fear. "Go!" I hissed, finally finding my voice, and without another word, we bolted down the hallway. I heard the floorboards creak behind us, and for a split second, I thought the creature was following. But I didn't dare look back. We practically flew down the stairs, feet pounding on the wood, hearts racing in unison. Sheldon reached the door first, pulling it open with a loud creak. But as we rushed outside, we all stopped in our tracks. The old man from the road stood at the edge of the driveway, his face illuminated by the pale glow of the moon. His smile was still there, that Sheldon crooked grin that had seemed harmless before but now sent chills down my spine. "I see you found the house," he said, his voice gravelly and thick, like it had been dragged through the mud of time itself. "How'd you sleep?" Callie clutched my arm tighter, and Sheldon stepped forward, his face contorted in anger and confusion. "What is this? Who was that up there?" The old man's smile didn't falter. He just chuckled, a deep, unsettling sound that seemed to echo in the still night air. "This place. It ain't meant for rest, boy. It's meant for other things." "What things?" Harry demanded, his voice trembling but defiant. "What is that thing inside?" The man took a step closer, his limp more pronounced now, his shadow stretching out toward us like a claw. "Hollow Creek Manor don't like to be forgotten," he said cryptically. "And neither do the ones buried here." "Buried?" My blood ran cold as his words sank in. That coffin. The figure. Were they some sort of restless spirit? An echo of something left unfinished? Sheldon was visibly shaking, trying to keep his cool. "We're leaving," he spat. "And we're not coming back." The old man's smile faded, his expression darkening. Oh, you'll leave. But whether you come back or not, well, that ain't up to me. It's up to him. I swallowed hard, realizing with dawning horror that the man wasn't talking about himself. He was talking about the thing inside the house, the thing that had looked at us with hollow eyes and a hunger that felt almost eternal. Sheldon grabbed my hand, his voice low. Let's get out of here. We didn't need to be told twice. We bolted for the car, scrambling inside as fast as we could. Harry fumbled with the keys for a moment before starting the engine, and within seconds, we were speeding down the road, the manor growing smaller in the rearview mirror. No one spoke for a long time. The only sound was the hum of the engine and our collective breaths as we tried to process what had just happened. My mind was spinning, trying to make sense of it all, but the more I thought about it, the less sense it made. Finally, Callie broke the silence. What? What was that? None of us had an answer. Sheldon just shook his head, staring out the window. I don't know, he muttered. But whatever it was, I don't ever want to see it again. We drove for what felt like hours, none of us daring to look back. But as the adrenaline slowly faded, a creeping dread began to settle in my gut. Something didn't feel right. It was too quiet, too still. And then I noticed it. Harry, I whispered, my voice barely audible. Where are we? He glanced at me, confused. We're on the road. I think. No, look. The road ahead of us was winding, the trees looming overhead like dark sentinels. But it was the Sheldon Road, the Sheldon Path. We hadn't left Hollow Creek. We were driving in circles. Callie leaned forward, her voice shaking. Harry, why are we back here? I don't know. Harry's voice was laced with panic as he gripped the steering wheel tighter, his knuckles white. I've been driving straight, I swear, but we're back here, I said, my heart racing. We're back at the house. Sure enough, as we rounded the bend, the house came into view again, standing silently at the edge of the woods, its dark silhouette framed by the moonlight. It was as if we had never left. What the hell is going on? Callie cried, her voice cracking with fear. Sheldon shook his head, running his hands through his hair in frustration. This can't be happening. It's like the road is looping. I wanted to scream, to cry, but I forced myself to stay calm. Okay, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. We need to think. There has to be a way out. There isn't, Harry muttered, his voice hollow. We're trapped. No, Sheldon said, his eyes flashing with determination. There's always a way out. We just have to figure it out. But even as he said the words, I could see the doubt in his eyes. We were all thinking the Sheldon thing. What if there wasn't a way out? What if this was it? We were stuck, doomed to repeat the Sheldon nightmare over and over again, like some twisted loop of time. I stared at the house as we passed it again, and a chill ran down my spine. The windows, dark and lifeless just moments ago, were now glowing faintly, as if lit from within. And in the upper window, I saw it, the creature, watching us. The atmosphere in the car was suffocating, everyone silently grappling with the nightmare we couldn't wake from. Sheldon kept muttering under his breath, trying to piece together what was happening, while Callie clung to the seat, her eyes wide, haunted. Harry's hands shook as he gripped the wheel, knuckles white with tension. I think we need to go back, I said quietly, breaking the silence. What? Sheldon turned to me, frowning. Go back to the house. You're out of your mind. I don't think we have a choice, I replied, my voice tight. We've been driving in circles. The road. It's not letting us leave. Something's keeping us here. Harry nodded slowly, fear etched into every line of his face. She's right. Maybe we missed something back there. Something that can help us. Callie looked at me like I was insane. Help us? From that thing? Allison, it's a monster. How the hell is going back going to help? I don't know, I admitted. But this isn't just a normal place. That house, it's alive. Or something inside it is. And until we figure out what it wants, we're stuck. Sheldon ran a hand through his hair, clearly torn. I don't like this. But you're right. We can't keep going in circles. Reluctantly, Harry turned the car around, and we drove back toward the house. As we approached, the faint glow from the windows flickered again, like the house was aware of us, watching, waiting. The closer we got to the house, the heavier the air seemed to grow, as if the very atmosphere around Hollow Creek Manor was thicker than normal, pressing down on us. The windows glowed faintly, casting eerie shadows over the front yard. The creature wasn't visible anymore, but I knew it was still watching, lurking somewhere just out of sight. The house, with its crooked silhouette, seemed almost alive, like it was breathing, waiting for us to step inside again. Harry killed the engine, and the car's hum faded into a dead silence. None of us moved. We all just sat there, staring at the house, our nerves stretched to the breaking point. "I can't believe we're doing this," Callie muttered, her voice trembling. She had her arms crossed tightly, as if trying to hold herself together. Sheldon was the first to speak up. "Okay," he said, his voice low but steady. "We go inside, figure out what this thing wants, and then we get out of here. No messing around. Stick together." "Yeah, and if we see it again?" Harry asked, his knuckles still pale from gripping the steering wheel. Sheldon shrugged. "We figure it out as we go. There's no manual for dealing with whatever the hell this is." I took a deep breath, forcing myself to focus. The creature, it didn't attack me before. It just watched. Maybe it's trying to tell us something. Tell us something? Callie's voice was incredulous. "Steph, this thing is straight out of a nightmare. It's not here to have a conversation." "I don't know," I admitted, trying to make sense of the chaos. "But we can't just keep running. It didn't hurt us last time, so maybe it's tied to the house somehow. Maybe it needs us to see something." No one had a better idea, and despite the fear gnawing at my insides, I knew we didn't have a choice. We couldn't leave, and the house was the only place that seemed to hold any answers. "Let's do this," Sheldon said, opening his door. "We stick together, no matter what." We all followed, hesitantly stepping out of the car and walking toward the front door. The sound of our footsteps on the gravel was deafening in the eerie silence of the night. Even the crickets had gone quiet, as if the very world around us was holding its breath. The door creaked open on its own as we approached, as if the house was welcoming us back inside. The interior of the house was even darker than before, shadows clinging to every corner. The faint light from outside barely made it past the threshold, leaving us to rely on the dim glow of our phone flashlights. The air smelled musty, like old wood and forgotten memories. Dust motes danced in the beams of light as we stepped inside, the floor creaking ominously under our feet. We walked cautiously, side by side, through the front hallway, which stretched on longer than it should have, like the house was bending reality to suit its own needs. Every creak of the floor, every gust of wind rattling the windows made my heart jump. But there was something else, a faint whispering sound, like distant voices murmuring just beyond the walls. "What is that?" Callie whispered, her voice barely audible. "I don't know," I said, trying to focus on the sound. It was like a breeze, but with words too faint to understand. Sheldon shone his flashlight up the stairs. "Maybe it's coming from up there." Of course, it would be coming from the one place none of us wanted to go. Harry swallowed hard. Do we follow it? What else are we going to do?" Sheldon muttered, already heading toward the stairs. "Come on, the sooner we figure this out, the sooner we can leave." We followed him up the narrow staircase, the wood creaking under our weight, each step feeling heavier than the last. As we reached the second floor, the whispering grew louder, though it still felt like it was coming from everywhere and nowhere at the Sheldon time. The hallway on the second floor was lined with doors, each one slightly ajar, as if inviting us to open them. Faint moonlight streamed into the cracks in the shutters, casting long, eerie shadows across the floor. "Pick a door," Sheldon said, his voice tight with tension. "We need to figure out what's going on in this place." Harry was the first to move, cautiously approaching the nearest door and pushing it open with the tip of his foot. The room beyond was small and empty, dust covering the floor and furniture. It looked like no one had lived there for decades. Sheldon moved to the next door, opening it slowly. "Nothing," he said after a quick glance inside. "Just another empty room." I moved to the door at the end of the hall. Something about it felt different. The whispering was louder here, almost as if it was coming from the other side. I hesitated for a moment before pushing it open. The room beyond was larger than the others, and at first glance, it looked just as empty. But then I saw it. On the far wall, there was a large, old mirror, its surface fogged with age and grime. And in the dim reflection of my phone's flashlight, I could see something moving. "Guys," I whispered, my voice trembling. "Come look at this." The others joined me at the door, their faces pale in the dim light. "What is it?" Sheldon asked, stepping forward to get a better look. I pointed to the mirror. "Look." At first, they didn't see it, but as we all stared, the fog on the surface of the mirror began to shift, like something was moving behind it. And then, slowly, a figure began to emerge from the mist, a dark silhouette, humanoid but twisted, its form shifting and changing like smoke. "It's him," Harry breathed, his voice barely above a whisper. The creature. The figure in the mirror seemed to be watching us, just like it had before. But now, there was something different. Its one visible eye glowed faintly in the reflection, and the whispers that had been so faint before grew louder, echoing around us like a chorus of voices, all speaking at once. "What do you want?" Sheldon asked, his voice strong, though I could tell he was terrified. The figure didn't respond, at least, not in words. But as we stared at it, the whispers seemed to coalesce into a single, chilling phrase. "He is coming." A cold shiver ran down my spine. The air in the room grew colder, and the figure in the mirror began to fade, dissolving back into the mist. "Who's coming?" Callie asked, her voice shaking. Before any of us could answer, the door to the room slammed shut behind us with a deafening crash. We spun around, but the door was sealed tight, the handle rattling uselessly as Sheldon tried to open it. "We're trapped," he muttered, panic creeping into his voice. "No," I said, trying to stay calm. "There has to be a way out." The mirror began to fog up again, the mist swirling and shifting, and this time, words appeared, scrawled across the surface like scratches etched into the glass. "He watches. He waits." Callie was shaking, tears welling up in her eyes. "What does it mean? Who's watching us?" "I don't know," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "But I don't think we're alone in here." The whispers returned, louder now, more insistent, and as they filled the room, I realized with growing dread that the creature wasn't the only thing watching us. The silence that followed felt like the calm before a storm. We stood frozen, our eyes darting between the mirror and each other, as if expecting the figure to materialize in the room at any moment. The house, Hollow Creek Manor, seemed to have come alive, its walls pulsing with an unseen force, breathing with the Sheldon unsettling rhythm that had trapped us from the moment we set foot inside. Sheldon was the first to break the tension. "We can't stay here," he said, his voice tight. "Whatever it is, it's not going to stop until we're..." He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. Callie was clinging to my arm now, her knuckles white. "But the door..." I shook my head. "There's always another way." My voice sounded braver than I felt, but someone had to keep it together.